Right, so Halsey, Heath and Ridge, part two. So we're going to go over what's positive and what's negative about this study. Don't forget, as always, that if you are evaluating a piece of research or a study of some sort, you can be positive, okay? Evaluation isn't just negative. It's easier to be negative, but you can be positive if it makes sense, which this piece of research does. So positives, okay, so it's an empirical piece of evidence, okay, it's factual, it's a piece of research that actually happened, which is more than can be said for some of the theories, like Parsons, for example. It's not necessarily based on anything. So it's based on three distinct class divisions based on employment. Okay, we could spin this and turn that into a negative, and we should really, because social class is a relative concept. It's something that changes year by year, pretty much. So again, who's to say that people who were in the service class in 1980 would be considered the top class these days? I mean, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I don't know about you, but administrators, I'm not sure they fall into the top class anymore. So something to be considered, certainly. By the way, it's a piece of empirical evidence to show the differences in educational achievement based on social class. So that's definitely something to be praised. It's a fairly large sample. Okay, so I said that at the beginning, 8,000 men. Again, a fairly decent age range as well. So there is scope for generalizations to be made. Okay, so that's another positive that can be drawn from it. However, moving on to the negatives, okay, it does exclude females. Okay, it says it at the top here. And as I said before, it really does boggle the mind, because it openly admits that if they had studied females, it would have vastly changed the outcomes of the research. So, I mean, that's a huge criticism, huge one. I'd say that is probably your go-to criticism of this study. Equally, feminists would have their take on it, in that it does show that gender inequalities are far greater than class inequalities. So obviously this is studying class inequalities in education, but they ignored a whole gender. And that basically would lead them to believe that it's true that gender inequalities are far greater. So again, something to talk about there. You could consider it outdated, okay? The trends in higher education have vastly changed in the last 15, 20 years, 10, 15 years, sorry, which is basically indicating a change in attitude towards access to higher education. These days, you don't need to be high class. You don't need to be really, really wealthy to go to university. Anyone can, okay? And that does vastly change the likelihood of people from this working class having access to it, okay? Because we're seeing that more and more people are engaging with higher education. So realistically, this 1980 piece of work is like slowly becoming more and more outdated because of this rise in social mobility and also just access to higher education in general. So definitely something to write about there. Okay, so again, this is one of those ones that you read and you think, oh, crikey, I don't understand these statistics. Okay, but it is showing something so painfully simple that you really can include it in pretty much any, well, not any, but in a lot of education essays in 12 markers. So please do create your flashcard about this one, because it's definitely worth noting down as a study. It's definitely worth not ignoring. Let's put it that way. Okay, so any questions, as always, about this one, do drop me an email and I'll be happy to clarify anything for you. Thanks, guys. See ya.